We're live. We're live, and he walks away. We're making it right now.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming and for sticking around to hear about the sabbatical. It was quite an experience. Quite a lot of experiences, really. So I've kind of organized it into these different categories. People I met riding that train, actual astro, pretty pictures, artifacts, superlatives, and lessons learned. Q&A, questions and answers. For anything else that I missed. So I thought I would let you pick where we're gonna go. So Lori, pick a category.
Pretty pictures.
Pretty pictures. All right. So I've got a slideshow set up with a very small number of my 2,000 pictures.
Oh, without that?
Yeah.
Oh, not even. Trust me.
And I almost had it. Oh, no.
It's not that.
All right. Did you see the stars?
Yes.
They were all day pictures.
I know. Oh, yeah, there was one night picture.
Maybe it's just me, but there seems to be an astronomical theme to this whole thing.
You look really good standing next to big things. Big metal things.
Thank you. All right.
Did you have to, I guess when you go to those things, can you just book ahead kind of thing?
Yeah, a lot of them have tours daily, but more of them have very limited. The ones that are historical and aren't doing live science, you can go pretty much anytime. But the ones that are still doing science, you get 1 or 2 days a month. Right. Well, they don't want the crowds in because they're taking science. You know, they're doing science. So.
That's why we scheduled a very large array for when I came to New Mexico on a particular weekend.
Yeah, they have 2 days a month. You can visit the very large array and get out, you know, and do the full tour and see the control room and all that sort of thing.
In the very large array, there are some kind of tracks or something
Yes.
that can actually move and focus
Yeah.
and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, they're double tracked, all of those. There are 27 dishes. And the tracks run 11 miles and 13 miles and 13 miles. They have 3 tracks in a Y. And so in the largest configuration, it's a 22-mile diameter. And the way radio astronomy works, if you sync up the signals that each antenna is getting just right, then it has the effective diameter of the distance, the diameter of the largest distance among them, between them. So again, effective 22-mile. The day that we were there, they were in the A configuration, so everything was in about a half mile, which was great for pictures.
Is that a closer up thing, like only 7 million light years away?
Well, it's more about the resolution. So when you have a wide dish, you get a narrow picture. And when you have a narrow configuration, you get a wider picture, or the other way around. I don't remember. But it has to do with
Are you allowed to listen with headphones?
You can, but it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. You know, the movie Contact, if you saw the movie Contact, they filmed part of it there at the Very Large Array. And that's where you see Jodie Foster sitting with her headphones listening to it. Well, it would just be static. But, you know, she was trying to find the patterns in the static. So.
Really cool thing about the Very Large Array too is we were standing out there looking at those things, and they got talking to people in their word, and you keep up and they're moving.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
word, they all moved, and they kind of moved independently. And then there was a particular configuration that if there was a lot of wind or if there was any sort of storm kind of thing, they went to the tulip configuration, they called it this,
Yeah.
which is
Bird
least- I thought they called it tulip. Tulip bird bath.
Both. Yeah.
Anyway, they did it that way so that it was less likely to be damaged.
Yeah. But they don't get a lot of storms out there, I think. It's pretty dry. Yeah.
In all your travels, what did you find that scientists are doing that's pushing the envelope?
Oh, everything.
That's your actual password.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to actual one. Well, so the actual astro is the things that goes back to Grant's question. Did I see any stars? And those are the sites where I actually look through telescopes at stars, except for New Mexico where I use my eyeballs. But so the cutting edge technology, like at just most of the places that I went have at some point been a cutting edge science thing, right? So the Yerkes Observatory has that 40-inch refracting telescope. It's the biggest refracting telescope in the world. So the refractor is the kind that has glass lenses at both ends, right? So no mirrors, right? And so you can't make glass bigger than that and put it in a tube that would work because everything just starts to sag under its own weight. and straight, and you can't get a good image from it. So 40 inches is still it's still the largest refractor in the world, built in 1897.
Oh, wow.
All right. But now, if we hopped over to superlatives, looking through that, I got to spend 4 hours with about 20 other people looking through that 40-inch telescope at Jupiter, Saturn, a couple of star clusters, and nebulae. It was the most disappointing experience.
Oh.
I had the highest hopes for it, I think, is partly why. Because I thought, wow, 40-inch telescope, it's going to be awesome. But it's in Wisconsin in the middle of the summer, and it's humid, and it's over a lake, and there's all this heat coming up off the lake, and there was the humidity was like 70%, and so it's not that the instrument was bad, it's just that the conditions in that part of Wisconsin were terrible, and they only manage about 100 nights of observing a year there, whereas in some of the sites in California, they're getting 300, 320 nights a year. But getting back to the cutting edge stuff, the Mirror Lab at the University of Arizona in Tucson is producing, and there was a picture in there of that, they're producing these 8.5 meter large mirrors. So a meter is 40 inches, so it's about 340 inches across, which is a lot of feet.
That's 10 feet.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's 8.5 yards, so it's 30 feet.
30.
About 30 feet, about 30 feet across. So you have this 30-foot mirror. It's going, and they're making 7 of them that will all go in one telescope. And they are polished to within 1/millionth of an inch. So that if you took that mirror and made it the size of the United States, the biggest bump on it would be 1 inch high.
Oh, good.
So that's cutting edge technology in the polishing and creating that sort of thing.
And those mirrors are going to Chile?
Yeah. So they'll be in the Giant Magellan Telescope in Chile, in the Atacama Desert. It will be able to outdo the Hubble telescope by tenfold from the ground. So you have that kind of thing. Then the LIGO site in Louisiana is gravitational waves, and that's the one with the 2.5 mile laser tube. So what that does is it takes a laser beam, splits it into 2, and both of these go down 2.5 miles, reflect off a mirror, come back 2.5 miles, and again syncing up everything. You get a nice even pattern when they come back, right? And if anything bumps it, then you get a distortion pattern, and then you can say, oh, well, something moved, right? And then they subtract out all the other forms of vibration, like earthquakes and trucks and trains and weather and wind and people walking across the room, and they can measure the distortion of space-time, right? So the fabric of the universe vibrates when supermassive things like black holes swing around each other and collide. And in order to measure these things, they're so far away, and the waves are so small by the time they get to us, that they are measuring with a precision of 1/10,000th the diameter of a proton of a hydrogen atom. So it's just mind-blowing, the cutting edge.
But what are they looking for? If you add them all together, And we've had, astronomy for a long time. And some of these telescopes have been here for a while. And we've had, the Voyager and things like that. So what are they looking for now? Are they just looking at the same thing that they always look at? Or are they trying to push what they're looking at?
Yes.
Remember when we had the very large array, I asked that woman who was looking at it, the most exciting thing was that she's.
Yes, yeah.
And so that's an example.
Yeah, so there are a couple things. There are folks who do regular observations of all the same stuff just to see if it stays the same and to give a baseline for comparing it to other things that are like that. And there are folks who are trying to look at the same things in different ways or different wavelengths. And then there are folks who are trying to see things that we've never been able to see before because now we have better technology. And the gravitational waves is one of those last ones. We've never been able to do that until the last 5 years, even though it was predicted 100 years ago with Einstein's general relativity. So what Molly's referring to is that last year there was an event where the LIGO observatories, and there are 2 in the United States and there's 1 in Italy. They detected a gravitational event and were able to narrow it down to this block of sky like this. And then at almost exactly the same time, there was a gamma ray detection from about the same place. And so they were like, oh, hey, well, something's going on there. And they turned everything on it. And so they were looking at it in infrared, ultraviolet, visible light, gamma rays, and gravitational waves. And they found a place where then they add in computer models of what they think the universe is doing. And they found a pair of neutron stars had collided. Neutron star is the collapsed core of a giant star, and it's so dense that everything in it turns into neutrons. And if you remember your chemistry, that's one of the things in the nucleus of an atom that doesn't have any charge. Right? And they should just push each other apart because they're so close, but because they're so close, they glom onto, other things happen and they glom onto each other. Super dense stuff. So from that, they were able to find that when these things collided, it produced all these heavy elements that we didn't know where they came from, like gold, silver, platinum, uranium. They thought maybe they came from supernovas, stars blowing up, but they'd never been able to find it. And in this, they found, for example, that there was an Earth's mass of gold produced in this collision.
Oh, wow.
And just blown into space.
It's amazing they can tell what the elements are.
Yeah, well, they do that because every element produces a particular spectrum of light that it either emits or reflects. And so you take a spectrum, you take the light from what you're looking at and you smear it out into the spectrum, into a rainbow, run through a prism or whatever. And then you can see the different lines that are absorbed or the other way around if it's emitting it. And then you match that up with all the, we know what all the elements produce. And so you match it up, you know what frequency, oh, that's interesting.
It's a neutron star event.
Oh, it's the other one. It's the other one. It's this one. There we go. So, yeah, you can tell, you know what the frequencies of those things ought to be. And so when they show up from 9 billion light years away, they're not in the right place. They're shifted to the red because if it's moving away from us, right? Which at that distance it usually is moving away from us. And so by measuring the distance and the frequencies, you can tell how far away it is. that's how they figure out all these new things.
I have, the explanation doesn't take up too much time. So, astronomy is dealing with first.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the vibrations that would fall.
Mhm.
And what came to my mind is, does astronomy ever deal with our human energy fields that we have around us?
Astronomy does not. As we-
Physics were.
Yeah, biophysics
Okay.
probably. Yeah,
So our human energy fields have been measured, obviously, right now by.
I would think so.
And maybe neurologists.
Yeah.
Neurologists are doing tremendous mapping of the brain and all kinds of things. And like neurologists and biophysicists are looking at things like when people pray or meditate and what the changes are.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm always pleased to answer astronomy questions. Yeah. Yes, that was the train. That was the train line. So these are the different. Yeah. Yeah. I was not. I was riding that train. So these are the different train lines on Amtrak that I took. The Capital Limited runs between here and Chicago. Hiawatha runs up to Milwaukee from Chicago. City of New Orleans runs Chicago to New Orleans.
And gives you an earworm.
Yes, another earworm. The Southwest Chief runs from New Orleans to Los Angeles, across Texas. The Sunset Limited also does about the same. California Zephyr goes from Los Angeles to Chicago through Denver, and then the Capital Limited back.
So of all of that, is there any that you would recommend or any that you would definitely not recommend?
The Capital Limited was the worst in terms of schedule. It was 3.5 hours late arriving to Harper's Ferry to start with, and by the time we got to Chicago, we were 6.5 hours late. So yeah, and that's part of the problem is that all the passenger traffic runs on the commercial lines, the freight lines, and the freight lines have precedence. So if the freight train's coming through, the passengers have to sit on the side. And we ran into so many freight trains along that trip, and that was the only one where I had to make it. So I missed it twice, and ended up, fortunately, the connection ran like 4 or 5 times that day. And so the next one, we arrived just about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We were supposed to have gotten there at 8 or something. And the train left at 3, my train left at 3:10. And so I got there, and there were 2 women who were sitting in my section that had been up ahead of me. They had gotten off just ahead of me. They must have been in their 80s. They both had 3 of the giant suitcases.
Good night, yeah.
You know, and their train that they were trying to make was a 2:55. And so they're getting off ahead of me, and one of them turns to me and says, "Young man, can you help me carry these bags up to the station?" It's like, "No, I can't. Your train is gone and mine is not. I can't. No, but you can do it. You're strong." And so she's one of in one of the other circles here, people I met, strangers in need. So I ended up not helping her, except in as much as I yelled out to the rest of the crowd, "Is there anyone not trying to make a train?" And a couple people came over. So I think they finally, and it turned out when I got into the station, they were holding their train. Yeah. So I think they probably got on it, but not with much of it. So I wrote a lot about that in my journal. But I did make my train, that one. The food on the Capital Limited is meh. Food on all the rest of them is really good. And especially true because I took coach on the Capital Limited going out, which was miserable. Trying to sleep in those coach seats. We had done it 10, 12 years ago or something, going out to Colorado with the kids, and it was fine. It was fine. Yeah, no, I'm sure that the seats are just degraded. It's not me. But trying to sleep in they're big, comfortable seats, but I couldn't find a way to get comfortable. There was a big guy sitting next to me, and he was already asleep when I got on the train. He was kind of leaning into me, and he had a blanket pulled up over his head. He was out all night. I finally ended up sleeping in the lounge car for a while, and came back the next morning. I was like, "Oh man, you should have just pushed me over." I took my sleeping pills and I was out. It's like, that's how you do it. You got to take drugs. So the next leg that I was taking was the city of New Orleans. That was going to be 24 hours scheduled, 24 to 26. And I said, forget this. And I got a sleeper car, and it was awesome by comparison. Plus the food is included. The meals are included. So I did that the rest of the way. So that was the biggest expense, one of the biggest expenses of the trip, but well worth it. And it wasn't actually that bad. So and the food was, as I said, the food was actually pretty good.
Did you find God more on earth or in the heavens?
Wow, that's not a question that I anticipated. Yeah, that's a great question. I think probably yes, because one of the things that the book that I spent most time reading was, I mentioned this in a sermon just after I got back, was Stars Beneath Us. And it's about trying to change our theology to match our current cosmology. Because the theology that we've all grown up with is medieval theology, that God is up there, and then you have increasing spheres of influence going out and increasing purity as you go up, and increasing misery and sin as you come down, right? And so Earth is about the lowest on the holiness scale, and the only thing worse is underneath us, which is hell, right? And it was based on the cosmology of the day. That's what they thought the universe looked like. And so God is way out there somewhere, and we're down here. But now we have learned But now we have learned that the universe is very different from that, and that if God is above the stars, well, there are stars all the way around us. There are stars beneath us, and so God is beneath us as well as above us. And so God is right with us all the way through. We are in the middle of God's cosmos, not at the bottom. We're right smack in the middle of it, and God is everywhere with us. And so, yeah. So looking up is always a reminder, but then looking is also a reminder. And I found God in a number of interactions with folks on the train, a number of interactions with folks, strangers that I just happened into. So God is all around. And that's what I experienced. Good question. Good question. Yeah. So let's see, what else? Oh, the crews on the trains were awesome on the whole. They were all very good. And mostly seemed to be enjoying what they were doing. There were a few that had gotten kind of cynical, I think, but on the whole, they were pretty cool. What else? What else looks good here? Oh, you want to do the artifacts real quick? Okay, so artifacts of the trip. Here are all my refrigerator magnets that I bought, so you can take a look at those for all the different things. There's my backpack that I lived out of for 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And I bought t-shirts. So here's a t-shirt from the monastery. You wouldn't think monasteries would have swag, but they do. Right? The very large array, the Yerkes Observatory, which is closed to the public at this point because they lost their funding. Yes. Another Yerkes. Kitt Peak, the National Observatory in Arizona. Greenbank Observatory down here in West Virginia. That was my first stop. The Planetary Society, which was a space advocacy group. Palomar. And then Mount Wilson didn't have any swag, so I made one on Cafe Press. And same with LIGO. Made that. And then I got a card in the mail saying, hey, you should get a shirt like this. And I did. So that was Yep. So there's all those. And then I really want one from the Lowell Observatory. They had some great shirts, but my backpack was getting full. So, and they said, oh, we've got everything online. So I didn't buy one. And the one that I want is not online. So I haven't been able to get it yet. This is my icon. So the first week on the Grand Tour was in Wisconsin at the Sienna Retreat Center. And this is what we did. We made icons. It was called Painting and Praying with Icons. And this is the icon of Our Lady of the Sign, referring to the prophecy in Isaiah, this will be a sign to you, the virgin will conceive and bear a son. So here's Mary in an attitude of prayer with her hands up, and Christ in her womb, who is the Lord of the cosmos. And so it is said of this icon, the one who bears Christ is broader than the universe. So within her body is the one who creates all the universe. So that's what's being displayed there. And the fellow that was instructing us, Drazen, can't think of his last name. Anyway, Drazen is a master iconographer from Croatia. And there were 17 of us in the retreat, mostly novices. And I think that threw him off a little bit. He wasn't used to working with that many novices. But he just led us through it step by step. And we cranked on this like 8 hours a day for a week. It was a lot of work. And as a Presbyterian, we're not huge on icons, but I really came to appreciate not only the art and artistry of icons, but how they work in the Orthodox tradition as a direction for prayer. And they see the iconography and all their architecture as, and this really fit in very well, as doorways into time and space. The a place where eternity crashes into our world. So the architecture of Orthodox churches, where you have the dome in a box, basically, things that are square in the iconography represent earth, things that are round represent heaven. And so their architecture reflects that. The dome is heaven breaking into the world. And it's covered on the inside. You saw the one picture in there with iconography like this. And it's a way to see into eternity through the icons.
Is that like classical observatories?
More function.
I think it's more functional than theological. But the Palomar Observatory, which is in California, was designed in the 30s. It's an Art Deco, beautiful, beautiful building. And it was designed as a cathedral. And that's how they described it. And it works that way. The space is gorgeous. The sound inside is like being in the National Cathedral, the acoustics. So it's just really pretty spectacular. So anyway, that's my icon. So if anybody wants to see that. And what else? Oh, I have my hat. My hat's in there. Yeah, the hat y'all gave me, so wore that around everywhere. And then at Green Bank, I got to use 2 of the radio telescopes, which was pretty cool, 40-foot and a 20-meter scope. And I got to do actual science. So there's actual radio science right there. Did I show you this before? I don't know. Detecting neutral hydrogen in the core of the Milky Way galaxy. So at a particular coordinate set, so right about there in the night sky, we aimed it there and we found hydrogen that was moving away from us at 48.5775 kilometers per second. You could tell all of that from squiggly line made with a little printer. So that was probably where I learned the most, was at Green Bank, because I'd never done much radio astronomy. So being able to do that and actually do science. So back in the 60s, they started doing this, 60s and 70s, they started mapping this, mapping the hydrogen in the galaxy this way. And so this is one point, on the map. And so to get an idea of what's going on in the universe, and this took like 20 minutes to do, you would have to do that for the whole sky. And you get this one point and plot it there, and it's like, okay, let's go 2 degrees up, do the same thing. Okay, it's moving about the same speed there, go 2 degrees up, and you just keep doing that until you cover everything. And so I gained a real appreciation for the grunt work of science and the dedication of these scientists to do this grinding work and to build bigger and bigger equipment to get more and more data so they can understand it, because it takes huge amounts of data to get a picture of what's going on in a huge universe. So the drive of those scientists, I think, is something that the church could learn from. Hi, Samuel. With the church, we're a part-time church in a lot of ways in America. Even the most dedicated churches are kind of, I got my job to do, right? And we do our job and go to church when I can, but these scientists are just laser focused, and let's put everything we can. Let's convince somebody to give us the money so we can do this. And let's, convince somebody to do this project. And I don't care if it takes 20 years, we'll do this thing, you know? And we don't have that kind of passion for the church, in my experience. Yes, that is one of my lessons learned. So, yeah, icons can be cool. God all the way around. We talked about the focus and drive. Displacement. After about 5 weeks on the road, I was done being on the road. And I still had a couple weeks to go. But what I realized was that if you want to get something out of life, you have to let yourself be uprooted sometimes. You know, you have to be displaced in order for God to place something new in the middle of your work. And so that's something that I'm trying to carry with me, is the idea of getting up off the couch, you know, and getting up and out and doing something different. I'm not very good at that. I'm at the point in life where sitting on the couch is good. I like doing that. You know? But we need to allow ourselves to be displaced sometimes, so God can do a new thing with us. Science and economy. That struck me in Louisiana at LIGO. You have this $1 billion facility, and all around it, in the county that I saw, is lowland shacks and trailer parks. And you can go into the town of Livingston, and there's an auto parts store and a Dollar General, and that's, you know, a fast food joint, and that's pretty much the extent of the retail. And then at the south end of town, there's this huge new county government complex. And that's pretty much the economy in the area. And the science is trickling down at all into the community. And I don't know that it's not, it might have been worse, you know, before, but we need to find ways to get the benefits of all that investment into the communities that are surrounding them. So that struck me. Logistics and Providence. You know, I tried to get the grand tour planned out months in advance, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't get it all to fit together. And so it was sometime before I was supposed to be going on the retreat, Molly said, "When's your first retreat start in Wisconsin?" And I said, on the 5th. She said, "Oh, next week." It's like, "What? No." She said, "Yeah, that's next weekend." Oh, crap. So I had like 4 days. I didn't even realize that I had to get all my stuff ready to go on a 6-week tour in 4 days. And I didn't have anything planned except this retreat. And so I got that much done to get out to Wisconsin. And while I was in... It is. While I was in Wisconsin, I planned New Orleans. While I was in New Orleans, I planned for Tucson. And every step of the way, everything worked out just the way it needed to, not a moment before. And so I spent a huge amount of time on logistics while I was on the trip, which I did not anticipate. But God's providence was evident throughout it because it all just worked. So that was pretty cool. And gratitude. I just had a profound sense of gratitude the whole way through the trip for Molly, for all of you, all the folks who were back here doing the things that needed to be done, the folks who had put up the cash, people who were putting in the time. and for God giving me the privilege, really, and all the baggage that goes along with that word, of being able to take a trip like that. It was a remarkable experience, and I was well aware of the sacrifices that went in to my being able to do it. So just very grateful to all of you for making it happen. And pretty much that, I guess. All right. Well, that's most of it. Well, people. There's so many people. I met a lot of scientists. I met a lot of religious nerds. Strangers in need. More than I could take time to tell you about. So, I mean, if you want to stick around, I'll be glad to tell you. If you want to see more pictures, I'd be glad to show you. But I kind of feel like we're winding down. So, any last questions? Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind attention, and we put it on YouTube so you can watch it later and tell your friends. So thank you very much for being here, and thanks for making it happen.
Thanks for watching Samuel.